All right, everybody. Welcome to episode 4 of Talking Out My Ass podcast. With me, your host, Sam, as always. And a new guest this week is Jordan. Jordan,
Hi,
thank you for joining me.
happy to be here. Got a great topic up my sleeve.
Oh boy, I've already been culture shocked by a couple, so what's another one? This is kind of the fun I get to have. Yeah, this is the thing is I don't know what Jordan's gonna tell me. So, Jordan, what do you got for me?
Uh, this one's a good one. Medically transitioning into as a trans woman.
Medically transitioning as a trans woman.
Yep,
Okay,
topic I know way too much about.
that you know way too much about. All right, I don't have the experience in this arena, so this is perfect.
Yeah,
I don't want to know what the topics are, and it's fun to not know. I ended up learning way too much in these last 3 podcasts about topics I wouldn't have thought about otherwise.
you're gonna learn a lot today.
So medically transitioning as a woman, are you just talking about the overall thing, or just specific things that you want to talk about?
I mean, we could do. I we could do specific things. It depends on what you want to know.
Hey, I guess I'll just ask the questions going into it.
Yeah.
What's what's the most misunderstood thing about medically transitioning?
Oh fuck. That's I think it's weird. It's like I think some of it is that it's like you are pumping yourself with hormones and shit, and you. I think one of them is people don't realize that trans women actually get a kind of a period in the way. Is that we actually do PMS because our body will regulate hormones as just a regular woman does because that's what bodies are fucking weird. It doesn't change your voice. That's a big one that people don't realize. Is testosterone for men will change your voice, but estrogen will not change it the other direction, sadly. And estrogen will naturally grow you boobs, so that's pretty nice.
Well,
But
that's
there's a million other things too.
a million other things. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Um, let's see if I can try to pinpoint any of them. So, how long does it take for your hormones to start changing once you start your medication? Is it like a week, a month? Is it
I mean,
vary
it's
by the
literally,
person?
well, I mean, technically it's instantaneous because you are just taking like straight up fucking estrogen and straight up. I mean, some people take testosterone blockers or whatever, but in theory, it starts immediately. You don't like notice the changes immediately, but in theory, at the moment you start injecting or taking pills or patches or whatever, you have more estrogen in your body than before, and that's really all it is. Is it's like adding more estrogen into your body to either overtake the testosterone or artificially lowering it so that a million other things happen. Um, but the changes themselves take. It's basically like going through puberty again. So I sometimes will say that I have the emotional capacity of a 14-year-old girl.
I mean, I'm trying to even remember. I mean, I'm going to be 30, so I think I'm still going through puberty the
I
way,
mean, yeah,
I act. So,
yeah.
yeah. But I mean, going through a second puberty as an adult, I mean, it's not even something I'm sure you can mentally prepare for, is it?
No, you realize that you you know that you're going to do it, and you like prepare yourself to do it, but you don't prepare yourself for the fact that it's like being 13 again. It's like in some aspects, in that your body is changing in ways you didn't realize or didn't know it could, and things get weird. Things get real weird.
I'm sure emotionally, physically, mentally, I mean, everything's going to change as soon as
Yeah,
your hormones change. So,
yeah.
have you noticed like your thought process have changed at all or anything like that? Or
No, and that some. I mean, I think some people do. I haven't necessarily. I mean, some thought processes. I'm definitely more emotionally charged in things, and I don't know if that's a puberty thing or a being a woman thing. But and I won't want to attribute it to being a woman because that feeds into stereotypes and shit. But I also am just like some of it. It's like I think of things in a way, and I'm still like mad at myself for thinking of things in a way that I see as masculine, which is interesting.
Hmm.
But it's I think it depends on the person. I think there's certain things you think about differently. Uh, Sex, especially, you think about a lot differently once you know, some people will come into like hormones and not be attracted to one gender or the other, or like be attracted to men or be attracted to women or whatever, and they'll start it and things will completely change. Their sexuality will change, which is interesting because it's interesting to see how our brains are wired for different hormones and how you're attracted to people. But I don't remember what the question was at this point, but I think I answered it.
Yeah, I was just asking if you think differently, if your thought
Yeah.
process has changed as you transition. Um, does so like when you decided, or not decided, but when this all started, is it you just go to like a regular physician to get the estrogen, or do you have to specialty doctors, or how does it?
So I took the pussy's way out, which is there's well I wouldn't say that. I'm not saying anyone who does it the way I did is. I'm took the person with kind of some money's way out. So basically, there's a million ways you can do it. It depends on the country and even the fucking state. But I did a thing called informed consent, which is I went to I signed up for an app basically that like there's other ways of doing informed consent, but basically I signed up for an app. They asked me a bunch of questions, and I paid like for a while I paid just like $100 a month, and I would get my prescriptions, and then they do lab tests and shit every 3 months, and um, and then I was getting it that way, and then I just switched to a. I was like tired of spending $100 a month because I was like, this is kind of expensive, and so I then just switched to a regular doctor, but I switched to like a specifically like LGBTQ affirming doctor, not like because there's a lot of doctors that just because I had a separate like primary physician, and she was just like, I'm not touching that at all. I know you're I'm not sure she wasn't transphobic in any way, but she did not know anything about it and was like, I'm not putting my hands on any of that. You seem like you got it all figured out right now. But then I was like, then she left the practice she was in. I was like, well, I'm going to go find a new doctor that'll actually do this so I don't have to spend as much money on this.
Yeah, cost savings definitely
Yeah, well, I
something
mean,
to help. But
yeah, but things start to rack up. It's expensive to be a woman, especially when you're not originally born one.
hmm. Now, is there so like just in your situation, like your doctor said you were handling it, and she didn't like she just didn't know how to handle it at that point, or she just wanted to refer you to somebody who was better at handling that specific
So
situation?
she did okay. So she did refer me to someone in the same practice that did it, and was actually well known for being like prescribing hormones and shit. But I, being the coward and anxious person I am, was too afraid to make the phone call to just make an appointment with her because I couldn't make an appointment online.
Hmm.
So I was like I just like I completely avoided it for the longest time, and then I went to a completely different health system, and they had like a Google form you could fill. I was like, "What do you want? Do you want surgery? Do you want hormones?" And I was like, "I want all of it. So give me a doctor."
Yeah,
And they gave me a doctor.
I would have never guessed that like us one doctor would know more than like the next, or like one specializes in it, or they're LGBTQ friendly doctors versus non. I didn't realize that was even a thing, obviously, but um, is there when you first started taking the hormones for estrogen, what's the first thing you noticed like changing?
Boobs.
Oops.
boobs, because this is the first thing that I was like concerned, because I started before I was out to basically 95% of the people I knew. So I was like, uh, I noticed the little baby boobs growing, and every time you touched your chest into anything, it hurt.
Hmm.
Very very soft and tender. Very I wouldn't say bruised easily. It's just painful to like walk into a wall and hit your boob on it, and it's like painful. Now it's not so much, but they're still. I mean, I still probably got 4 more years of this, so they're still probably going.
So do they give you a? See, it sounds weird to say, but like prognosis, like have how long everything needs to take to fully like flush your system, or is it pretty
No, I
quick?
mean, no, I mean, I'm at the point where I mean, like 6 months ago, 7 months ago, I was at the point where I was like, because the testosterone is naturally in a woman's body regardless.
Mm.
It's just a matter of how much. And I had less testosterone than a cis woman, so and more estrogen than a cis woman at one point. So it doesn't like flush out. It just the levels rebalance because I mean everyone's got the same hormones in their body. It's just a matter of how many of them or how much of them, I guess.
Now, like when they take levels before they prescribe you the specific dosage, or
Yeah, I mean, to start, they started me off on like a 2 milligram pill, like once a day, which wasn't a lot. And then they would do blood test, like they start you off with a blood test, and they do blood test every 3 months. I haven't had a blood test in a while because I have been neglecting that. But they take your blood and they're like, here's how much testosterone you have, and here's how much estrogen you have, and here's the normal range for a cis woman, and here's what you're at, and so you can either continue on what you're having, or because it does take a little while, and I would personally argue that the pills take longer to balance out than just injecting because that's what I do now. But I also wasn't taking a testosterone blocker, which most people take when they're taking the pill. You don't necessarily need it when you're injecting, but levels fluctuate like any other bodily function, even when you're actually like doing it, even when you're actually like actively figuring it out.
so over like did they give you a full period of time of like here's how long you have to take these things before your body regulates, or
No, I will have to take them forever.
forever? Okay.
Well, well, in theory, forever, um, because otherwise the testosterone will just take back over because your
Hmm.
balls naturally create testosterone. So until I get surgery down there, it'll my body will naturally create testosterone, and if I were to stop estrogen after my balls went away, it would basically be like going into menopause.
Hmm.
Because but you don't really want that. Everything, all the levels will change because your body isn't creating testosterone anymore. You actually might have to start taking a little bit of testosterone because you're supposed to have at least a little bit, and if your body's creating none, that's also a problem.
So like what other is there anything else you need to like do or take other than estrogen for this during like this process, or is there?
I mean, I also take a hormone called progesterone, which is it's another like female body thing, and I don't remember like there's a specific process. I think it's like the hormone that tells you you're not pregnant. I'm pretty sure, but basically, I you can use that, and it helps facilitate breast growth and brings your sex drive back because boy does that tank when you're on estrogen. It goes from morning wood to random boners to I never want to have sex again. I don't desire it. But I mean, and some people, and so it depends on the person. I mean, everything depends on the person. For me, it was like I have basically no sex drive, and then I started taking. I'm like, okay, it's kind of back, and it's back in a different way. And you start to, it's one of the weird things you start to realize. Um, the how different woman horny is from man horny.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure that's quite different.
It
Um,
very much is.
so in like all of your experiences currently, over the last however long, is there places you go like to talk to people about like how their things are going on, like not just like group chats, but like other places, like people you can go like talk to about other things, like other things they've tried, other things they've done to like try anything else to help you, or is it all basically whatever your doctor tells you?
I mean, most of my information to start came from Reddit. There's a lot of good trans subreddits, and so for a while I was actually asking them about things because there's um, there's a joke in the trans community about most trans people know more about the endocrine system than most doctors that aren't endocrinologists because just of there's such a lack of studies on what like you know putting the other sex's hormones in your body does to you because a we're a minority, b we're a minority that people actively hate, and c when you're both of those things they don't really like to put funding into figuring out why you exist or why or how the things you do work. I mean, there's still studies and things, but they're a lot slower than a study for something super common, I mean, something extremely common, you know, which we're not.
And then so obviously there's the physical aspects, but then the mental aspects, you said you started to feel some changes now. uh, is there, I mean, are there design mental health specialists for specific like transitioning specifically, or just any therapist or anybody who
I
just
mean, there are. I don't have one, but there are. But because a lot of I mean, I have my psychiatrist is ironically dealt with a lot of trans men, but not with a lot of trans women, but isn't like specifically for LGBTQ people. She's just like an ADHD psychiatrist, but she's dealt with a lot of trans people. And she's like, you're the first trans woman I've dealt with. How does that work? And I'm just like, well, let's sit down. Let's have this conversation. And then my therapist like deals with like LGBT. Well, and she's not my therapist anymore because moving, but dealt with like LGBTQ topics. But and I would talk about like transitioning and stuff. But I also think that I personally need like an actual someone who understands it, not necessarily a trans um, therapist, but someone who has dealt with a lot of trans people or trans issues and that kind of thing that I don't have.
right. As obviously, it's as much of a mental toll
Yeah,
as it is like a physical toll, obviously, as you're going through everything.
yeah.
So I just
Oh,
didn't.
it's a mental call.
And I think that's another thing that people don't understand is like trans people are going through changes like pretty much on their own. Like this isn't something that most people have. I mean, now it's probably more prevalent, but like when this was, coming to age and everything was starting to happen, nobody knew what was going on with somebody. And now you're pretty much on your own because nobody's really dealt with this. But obviously now it's seemingly more like easier to get assistance with stuff, I would imagine.
I mean, depends on where you're at.
Yeah, I guess
If you're
that's
in
true.
if you're in most states in the U.S., it's relatively easy. Except for the ones that are trying to kill us.
Florida.
Florida, every Tennessee, Arkansas. I can name every state with a Republican governor in the fucking country. Um, but then there's also like, I mean, it depends on the country too, because every country got their
Yeah.
own laws, and a lot of the countries, ironically enough, a lot of the countries with like socialist healthcare or socialized healthcare are a lot worse at it,
Mm.
or a lot worse at treating trans people. There's like, horror stories out of the UK that the wait lists are like super fucking long to even like see a therapist that will recommend you to a doctor that will prescribe you hormones, and then that doctor will only prescribe you very little hormones, and so people start just like ordering them off the internet from like Mexico and Turkey and China and shit because it's easier and there's a lot less gatekeeping.
Yeah, and obviously, like this is all FDA regulated, like drugs. Like it's not supposed to be something that you have to go out of your way to find. I mean, obviously, with countries and their laws, it's very stringent in specific countries, as with a
But
lot of things. But
it's also, I mean, it's also a lot easier to get estrogen from what are considered like gray market sources where you just like go on the internet and find a place than testosterone, because testosterone in the United States is a fucking like Schedule 2 drug. It's like an actual controlled substance that if you are not prescribed it and you're caught with a fuck ton of it, you could go to jail for it. So, and estrogen is not that way because misogyny.
yeah, that's a big part of it too. So, is there a specific timeline for like you have to take hormones for this long, before you can do any next steps, like have surgery or anything like that, or can you?
It's a year usually.
Okay.
Depends on though, because now they've a lot of the guidelines get revised every couple of years because there is a I don't the acronym is WPATH. I actually don't, it's something world something transgender health. But basically they put out new guidelines every couple of years that are like, here's what you have to get surgery, and then insurance will be like, here's even more shit you have to get surgery. Because the WPATH guidelines are actually pretty light now. They're like you just need one letter from a psychiatrist and you need 12 months of hormones if that's your thing. Because there are people who don't necessarily want hormones. They're like non-binary, or there's extenuating circumstances on why they can't take them, but they still want surgery or whatever. And there used to be a requirement that you have to have lived. I mean, there's still a requirement that you have to have lived like as your chosen gender for a certain amount of time, but that also varies, and that one's a little bit more. Um, you can fudge that a little bit because you could say you've been socially transitioning for how long, and some people won't know that. Like a doctor won't know that, a psychiatrist won't know that. Your friends might, but they're not gonna fucking rat you out to your doctor, hopefully.
Right. I mean, that would be the worst
Yeah,
news
but it's
ever,
usually
man.
around a year for hormones and a year for other things, and a couple of psychiatrist letters and saying you're mentally stable enough to do it, and that this is what you need to do, or else you'll kill yourself. Which that used to be a thing. It had to be bad enough to where you would want to literally kill yourself to be able to get a lot of things trans related.
What?
I mean, it's because back in the 30s and 40s, well, back when they started doing this, it was like, this is, it's a thing, but it's a rare thing. And they would turn down people who weren't, you know, going to pass, regardless. Like, passing is the term of looking like a woman, being able to act and sound like a woman. They would not let you get surgeries and stuff if they didn't think you were going to pass because they were trying to integrate you into society as basically essentially a cis woman, and but a trans woman who's what's known in the community as stealth, which is the only people who know you're trans are very few people, probably your closest friends and family, and anyone you meet will meet you as a cis woman or a woman that you don't tell someone you're trans. a lot of people still do that because it's fucking unsafe to not be. But yeah, they would not let you get surgeries and shit unless you were going to pass, and unless you were going to date a man. They didn't realize, they thought that because they were still so homophobic, but they were like, you know, you can be a woman as long as you're going to go date a man. One of the first big, like trans celebrities, or you know, well-known trans women in the United States was this woman, Christine Jorgensen, who was a World War II veteran, and there was all sorts of articles and shit about her, and there was like there was like interviews from the time where she was like, yeah, I am into men, and but women who are into women and men are into men are disgusting. She was extremely homophobic because any inkling that you might be gay would get you disqualified from getting any sort of help to be trans, at least in the U.S. or in the places you would get those surgeries and hormones prescribed and shit.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
we've come a long way, but we're also regressing.
Right. I mean, yeah, we've come a decent way, but I mean, there's
because it's also interesting. Well, this isn't a question you've asked, but it's something I want to add to that. Is that the interview? One of the big interviews she had was like from this like very, I don't know if he was a talk show host or radio person, but she like one of the big interviews she had of the day was with this very conservative like talk show radio DJ dude who respected her because she was a veteran and was like, you're not homosexual, right? But didn't care that, you know, it wasn't this like culture war thing that it is now. It wasn't like there weren't enough of us for them to give a shit.
Yeah.
For the American public to give a shit. There was the Nazis gave a lot of shits and killed a lot of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ay. I mean, like obviously even today it's, you know, you still have to be very careful about who you say things to, you know, even who you're very open about with, and that's got to be absolutely horrifying. I mean, not even just for trans people, like for any LGBTQ people, like it's obviously trans is like the big one that people are super against for whatever reason. I don't understand it, but that's because I'm not a terrible person. I'm not a good person, but I'm a terrible person. And I mean, it's not even a thing where like they try to understand. They just see something and say, "I don't like it. Let's get rid of it."
They think we're harming children when in anything we're helping the trans children who are like gonna hurt themselves if they're not able to do what they need to do. And it's actively harmful against them. So
yeah. It's, you know, I don't go through this, and I'm even just like, Jesus, like this is insanity. Like you see all the I think what was a couple days ago, I saw some shitty bills trying to get passed. I can't remember.
Which one of
terrible bills out there are you speaking of?
I don't. It was one that I saw going around like it was like 2 days ago, and not even. I can't even remember if it was a state bill or a federal bill that was.
They're almost entirely state bills. They're
okay.
They're not bold enough to try it federally yet because they don't have any control.
I want to say it was Arkansas. It was like one that went viral like real quick a couple days ago, just because I think the wording in there was just something like horrific about like, I think it was, what the hell was it? I think it said something about in favor of execution or something fucking crazy.
That might have been an abortion one. There was an abortion one in like South Carolina, but I mean, they're going hand in hand now. The same places that are passing all the abortion bills are all passing the ones that want to kill trans people. So there's the Florida one that says that you can legally kidnap trans children from their parents.
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
That one's I have choice. There's a special place in hell for Ron DeSantis.
There really is.
Just tell you.
And he wants to be the president. Ugh.
Well, I hope he becomes the president of hell. You know what?
it's definitely possible.
Okay.
If not,
let's not talk about my imminent demise.
Let's we can get away from that. So you went through like the timeline of the hormones and everything. We went over the mental aspects. Like what else on like, is there a day-to-day thing you have to do? Is like you said, the one estrogen pill you said was once a day that you originally took. Is that upped? Is it different now? Is it every few days?
I take the progesterone pill every night because it gets you, because sometimes it'll make you loopy and extremely horny. And
where do I buy these pills?
and then once a week ish, I inject estrogen, but that's when I remember, because usually it'll last long enough to go a little bit over a week, but you'll start to feel it once your body starts to produce more testosterone over estrogen, and it's like, oh no, I don't want that. That feels bad. Because it'll give you headaches and shit. It's weird. But that's like the only really day-to-day thing. I mean, some people will tuck every day. I refuse to tuck at this point. And you're gonna have to ask the question to figure out what that is. And then, but otherwise daily, it's usually, I should be voice training every day, but I don't. But otherwise, there's not a whole lot of like day-to-day things I have to do to like keep myself up there.
Let's talk about tucking.
The one thing I don't do, because that rarely need to. When I'm wearing leggings, I do. But basically, tucking is it's my, Ace Ventura fucking sucks as a trans representation movie, because boy does it suck. But they understood tucking. Basically, there's like a cavity that your balls will tuck into your, like, if you physically shove them up there, and then you kind of flap your dick over into your gooch. And some people will tape it down. Some people just wear really tight underwear and it'll hold it there. And that's tucking. I don't tuck because I don't need to anymore.
It's like a free wax if you tape it.
Well, they usually use like medical tape, which isn't super sticky, or other kinds of, some people use a thing called, drag queens usually use a thing called a gaff, which is basically underwear that has like a compartment that you can just put it in. Mm-hmm. I've had a lot of shrinkage down there, so I don't necessarily need to tuck that often anymore, unless I'm wearing leggings.
I get it. It gets cold outside. Now I do have something that's kind of been into my head that may come off very stupid, but what is it? What is the view for trans people on drag queens?
I think it depends on the person. I think as an artist, drag is an interesting art form. I'm not big into like drag shows or anything. Mm-hmm. I think it depends on the person. There are like trans women drag queens, and there are like, I think it's just a different way of how people play up femininity. It's more of a performance than anything. I mean, if you go by the communications class I took, everything is a performance, but it's a performance of hyper femininity that I'm fine. I'm not like I don't want to like say I'm anti-drag or anything. It kind of put me off against being trans for a while, because I'm like, oh, is that what being trans is? But now I'm like, no, it's a cool thing that people do. It's just not my thing that I like, something I like. or seek out to go see.
Right. Yeah, I just always kind of wondered that. I'm like, I obviously it's pretty big with RuPaul's Drag Race and everything. Obviously it's been on the air for I don't even know how long, 10 plus years. I just always had that thought in my head. I was like, I get like most of those people are LGBTQ people that do drag. Not all of them obviously, but I just had always wondered, like, do trans people see that and go, okay, some of them are maybe too appropriating, or like, is it like you said, does it depend on the person? Does it depend on the situation? Or
I don't think it depends on the situation. I think some trans people, there was a while back where it felt like a lot of trans people were against drag, and now we realize that the struggle is kind of combining, as a lot of those bands against trans people are also bands against drag too, and it's like, well, it's a performance in a way, and they're they're almost always good people. RuPaul, I remember, is possibly a transphobe, or at least kind of a dick to trans people, but otherwise,
I would not have guessed that.
Well, he's also into fracking, so
I don't know what that is.
That's like fucking drilling for oil and natural gas and shit.
Oh,
he fracks in his house or something. I don't know. Again, I don't know enough about drag to comment that much, but
yeah, I mean, and then like, I don't know, has there really been that much Hollywood representation?
Well,
that's been positive.
Positive Hollywood representation.
I know there was the one movie that was, I don't know, several years old, I think, with Eddie Redmayne that everybody was. I think was it the Danish Girl?
Danish Girl.
Yeah.
It sucks because it's a cis man portraying a trans woman. Even if it was a cis woman portraying a trans woman, that's a better representation, because it feels condescending to put a cis man to play a trans woman, and a lot of people don't like that, even though the movie is a somewhat positive portrayal of trans women. I guess it depends on what your definition of positive is, because I'm pretty sure, Laverne Cox is in Orange is the New Black, and I'm pretty sure her character is trans. They are in prison, but I haven't seen much of the show, but
I haven't either, but
I would assume it's not a super negative portrayal of trans women. Euphoria has Hunter Schafer, who's a trans woman playing a trans woman. Outside of that, it depends, and not a whole lot that I think Twin Peaks had a pretty good representation of trans people back in the day. From what I've heard, there's a trans character on there, and it's taken pretty well. But basically every other trans portrayal in media since the fucking 80s has usually been pretty bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like the only other popular one I can think of is Elliot Page. That was, obviously trans man, but
oh yeah, I guess no, that was good too, because in Umbrella Academy they made his character trans canonically as well, because he's trans, and like, well, we're gonna make his character trans too. But right. There are trans people in the media portraying things. I just don't necessarily remember who's who. But
yeah, I know with the Danish Girl, I know there was just like a lot of pushback at the time that it came out, because of, like you said, as a cis man playing that part. I just don't know. Like, obviously, I've never seen the show Euphoria, but I assume that was probably a pretty good representation.
Neither have I. It's not negative. Usually if you're getting a trans person to play a trans character, it's usually a good portrayal, or at least it's not going to be negative, because they're going to be like, what the fuck are you trying to have me do?
Right.
But I haven't, there still isn't a whole lot.
Yeah, I was just trying to like think in my head. I was like, trying to think, like you said, Laverne Cox was a popular one, Elliot Page, and then I was like, is there really other like big representation in Hollywood for like trans advocates?
Yeah, not really. There's not really that many. There's a lot of trans musicians too, in the music business, but not. There's a good number of trans actors. I could not name any of them off the top of my head outside of the ones I already have.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if that, a lot of people cling to what they see in like the media and in movies and all that stuff. So I was just thinking like in the top, off my head, like, is there a negative thing that's like driving people to this is, why we don't understand trans people or anything like that? If there was a specific,
there's a million of them is the problem.
Right. I was trying to like think of like one specific one that was like, oh, this is a terrible representation of trans people that really get people cling to that are like anti-trans or anything. But
I don't think there's any. I mean, there aren't any specific ones that they like. I mean, there are ones that they will make up for themselves, but there's also the really. I mean, there's bad trans representation in like every sitcom from 1985 onwards. There's I mean, even The Simpsons has had some pretty tasteless fucking shit that's not necessarily against trans people, but it's definitely transphobic. And then there's like Ace Ventura. The first Ace Ventura was pretty transphobic at the end there. But yeah, no, it's interesting. Not that great. Haven't had that many great portrayals of us in the media.
Right. So going back to the medical side of things, if somebody was coming to you for advice, like, hey, this is how the way I feel, where would you tell them to start? Would you tell them to do it the way you did, or would you tell them?
No, I would tell them not to do it the way that I did, because there are cheaper and easier ways of doing it that if you're not as socially anxious as me about making a phone call, would be way easier. I mean, the simplest thing is don't even start medically. It's buy some fucking girl clothes and just see how you feel. If you feel good, look into it more. If you hate it or whatever, or it makes you feel bad, still think about it, because it could be dysphoria, which is just you wanting to be a woman and then not seeing yourself as one at the time, or not seeing your body in the right way or whatever. But I mean, talk to a therapist. Definitely, if I would have done things differently, I would have talked to a therapist first before I'd actually started on anything. But medically, there's a million ways you can start, and depending on where and how you start, it could take longer or shorter, or figuring it out. But the easiest thing to say is, if you're figuring it out now, it's not too late. It's always the right. I mean, some people will say it's always the right time when you figured it out, but sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it isn't.
You think that talking to a therapist would be the best thing because they would kind of suggest that to somebody, or is it just?
I think it's less that they would suggest it to you, and it's more a sounding board of someone to figure those feelings out with. Because I mean, personally have on and off had feelings about being trans since I'm probably 9 or 10 years old. Some people have them even sooner than that, but basically like right before puberty, and like as I was getting into puberty, I was like, oh, being a girl sounds way better than whatever I'm doing right now. So, but other than that, I mean, you could go to a doctor first. It depends on what your rapport with your doctor is. If your doctor is kind of chill and you think your doctor will be chill with it, maybe go to them first and just fucking get started. But some might require you to just see a therapist first. I mean, there's a lot of gatekeeping. You could also just go to a lot of Planned Parenthoods will do it, and you can just go to Planned Parenthood and do it, which isn't, another reason to not lose Planned Parenthood is more trans people can figure their shit out.
Yeah. So what, like, for all the people that you have met or talked to, is there like an average age where they started to feel different?
Well, I mean, I think it skews. I mean, I actually I've never really asked. I mean, to be honest, I don't have like a whole lot of trans friends. Most of them are on the internet, but I think usually most people start to feel it around puberty and then don't recognize it until either then or later. But then also it depends on like levels of repression in your brain against like, you know, queerness and how your parents might think and all that. So there's a lot of factors involved in when people think they recognize it, because a lot of people won't recognize that some of the really early feelings about it were like, oh, I'm trans, until they're like way later in life, or until they've already started transitioning. They're like, oh, that feeling from back then is me feeling like I am me being trans. It's like I feel the same way with like being trans and also with ADHD, where I'm like, oh, that was ADHD and not just me being lazy kind of thing too. It's like it's a lot of the mental stuff is like, oh, recognizing things in the past, hindsight being 2020.
Yeah, I personally only know one other trans person who's a coworker of mine, and so she's also a trans woman. So she's talked to me about like a few things I've questions here and there like with her. So it's just interesting to like get the different points of view. Like oh, I felt this way starting at 14, or this is how I did it, and this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
Obviously you want to help people feel comfortable. Like this isn't a stigma. It shouldn't never be a stigma. This is just the way people feel.
Yeah.
It's it should be a positive thing to like get your talk to somebody. If you let people know how you feel, like this should never have to go the other way. This should never have been something to hide.
Yeah.
And obviously it's tough to feel that way with the way things are in America, especially. But I mean, it's frustrating. Obviously, me as a cis boring ass straight person has no experience in this arena, and I'm also very stupid about a lot of other things. But it seems like it's common sense thing is like, why are we treating people shitty who don't feel the way that they look?
Yeah.
It seems ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a little ridiculous,
And I mean, we could go on a dissertation, I bet, about that. But
there have been dissertations written about that. I can almost guarantee.
I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, is there anything else we haven't touched on that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I have one thing, because this was going to be my entire other topic, but it's surgery.
Yeah. Surgery,
which is the interesting thing, and it's interesting how it works. So if you'd like to ask a question, please do.
All right, let me just start this bit. I'm just kidding. Sir, so obviously I am assuming that's an expensive procedure.
Yeah, I mean, well,
is it more
I thought it was a lot more expensive than it was until I started looking at prices for it. But again, it depends on if you have insurance or shit, but and it depends on what surgery and what types of surgery you're getting on how much it's going to cost you too. But I mean, without insurance, it's anywhere in the like bottom surgery, especially, is anywhere in the 20 to like 50 grand range without insurance. Facial feminization surgery depends on what you're getting done. A boob job is a boob job. It's not super expensive because they're decently common, but it's still expensive. But I mean, the cost is prohibitive for sure, but there are also very few people who know how to do it, at least in terms of bottom surgery. I mean, plastic surgeons know how to put some fake boobs in and rearrange your face a little bit to make you look hotter, but not a whole lot of people who can turn an outie into an innie.
It's very true. I assume that's got to be a ridiculous specialty that you have to search vigorously to find.
There's actually, I mean, I'd say at this point in the U.S., there's at least one person per state, usually 2 or 3. Ironically, there was a city in Colorado that was the sex change capital of the world for a while, because the most famous American surgeon who did it was in a place called Trinidad, Colorado, and there's like a whole legacy there of the people who have gotten it there. It's interesting, but yeah, surgery. It's weird. It's weird. I've had to see some videos, and it would if I didn't want it done, if I were a cis man, that would make me fucking squirm for sure.
So what you're saying is don't go on a dark hole, deep dark hole on the web today.
It's not even a deep dark hole. You can find them on YouTube.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a lot of the saving up. But do you have like a specific timeline in mind for yourself, or is it all just depending on how much you can save?
I mean, granted that my new job has some great ass insurance, I don't think I have to save that much. It's actually the thing that's going to cost me most for it, I think, is electrolysis, because I have to get my entire dick and balls electrolyzed, and my gooch. And I'm not the gooch, taint. Taint.
The taint.
Taint's the word I've been using. But there's a lot of electrolysis there, and that's usually the thing that takes the most time, because in theory, if you didn't have to get any hair removal, you could, do it whenever. But I think part of it is that it gives you time to sit on a wait list and move up on the wait list, but it's also like it's something that needs to be done because you do not want hair growing inside of you.
Yeah, that could be bad.
Yeah, you don't want a hairy vagina. Especially on the inside. On the outside, some people are into that. Some people are into a nice bush, but
yeah, you don't.
On the inside, that shit gets infected.
Yeah, you don't want. Yeah, I wouldn't think that would be good.
No, it's not good.
That's medically speaking, comfortably speaking. Yeah. I didn't even think about that as a possibility.
Well, yeah, no. Well,
there
are different types of bottom surgery. Different surgeons will do it different ways, and there's also because there's vaginoplasty is like the like blanket term for bottom surgery where you were getting a vagina. There is also an orchiectomy, which is just getting your balls removed. Because some people will want that at least to start. I would rather just go all the way. But yeah, the videos are gruesome, man. I had a medical doctor explaining it to me on like a Zoom call, because I had to, when I originally signed up at the place my current doctor is at, and I will not be getting it there now. They had you take like an information session, and they told you everything that happens in the surgery and then everything you have to do afterwards, because holy shit, is there a lot you have to do afterwards too.
You had to imagine not just recovery time, but like everything else I'm sure you'd have to do.
Well, ironically, the recovery time to get back to like working is only like 6 weeks, but the actual recovery time of it healing and everything else is like at least a year. It's a year of cleaning your wounds, and then you have a thing that's called a dilator, which is essentially just a dildo that you use to stretch out the inside and make it bigger on the ends. Yeah, it's interesting, so to speak. There's a lot that happens when you're creating a vagina out of thin air.
That's an interesting magic trick.
It is. Well, there's also, there is minimal depth vaginoplasty, where some people don't want to have penetrative sex, so they'll just have one that looks like it from the outside, basically, and will function like it from the outside, but they don't want to have, they're a lesbian or whatever, or don't need to have sex with a penis and or anything that will penetrate them, and are just like, I am perfectly happy with this, and then they whatever. And then there's multiple ways they do the actual surgery itself that are range from literally turning your penis inside out to actually like pulling this weird sack that's like holds your organs in down a little bit more, and then I don't know how that one works, but it's a newer version of it, but it actually it's strange. It's all strange. It's all weird, but it's necessary.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what you want to, make sure you do it all out. That's definitely not a back alley surgery you want to go through.
No, it's funny is there's I read an article one time about actually not back alley, but like in the woods orchiectomies.
Oh, God.
Basically, it was I think they were licensed to perform the surgery, and they actually had the I think it was in like Washington or Oregon or Idaho or something, but they had like clearance from the state medical board to do it because they were doing it cleanly enough, but they weren't doctors, so they couldn't prescribe pills. So basically you'd go to your doctor, you'd get prescribed some Vicodin, you'd get knocked out with some fucking Vicodin, and they'd cut your balls off, and then you'd sleep on their couch for a couple of days. And then it was really interesting because it was like, oh, this is like, people in the rural middle of nowhere who probably don't have access to a lot of medical care that are like, need this done. But it's also interesting, and like, it's interesting in that like the state medical board came by and was like, yeah, this checks out. This is sanitary. You're doing it the best you can with what you have.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Sounds like a wild first date.
Yeah. Date to the orchiectomy shack in the woods.
Oh my God. I love that they ranked this seldom. It's good enough. I mean, yeah, wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing and terrifying.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, is there anything else?
I don't think so. I think I'm good. My original topic was gonna be just vaginoplasty, and I'm like, that's a little too gruesome for an entire podcast.
That's the beauty of this show. Then there's no topic off limits.
Yeah.
I mean, except for like, racial shit, things like that. I'm not gonna get into that, but you gotta find the right guest and not do that to me. But yeah, this is great. This is what this show is about. Not only it's if you want to get crazy with it, we can get crazy with it. It's something you care about. We want to talk about it. Something stupid, but talk about it. This is what it's all about for me. So, and I've been learning a lot over these first 4 episodes. So, Jordan, thank you so much for coming. Is there anything you want to plug?
I would like to plug ass that if you're watching this podcast, you probably already know about. I guess I'll plug Southside Socks because I write for them too. I'll plug my Twitter at Flannel Goddess. That's also my Instagram handle. And I'll plug my design website, my lighting design website, because that was another topic I thought about. JordanHaasDesign.com. Go look at all my cool lighting design shit. And if you're someone who's actually can hire me for something, hit me up.
There we go.
I need some money. I need
as much as she can get. We need it.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for
having
enlightening me about these things that I know very little or nothing about. So
the more people know about it, then the less there's a stigma around it, and hopefully less people will want to kill us.
That shouldn't have to be a goal, but let's make it.
It shouldn't have to be a goal, but it is the goal, Sam.
Well, if this doesn't do it, we'll have to try a lot harder.
Yeah. Well, not me. I can't really get that much harder anymore.
Oh. All right. And on that note, that is episode 4. If you're watching this, please like and subscribe to our channel. Again, I keep saying this, but we will have more on here. I promise. It's just a tough thing to do with a staff of 12 people. So we will we'll get on here more and more as time goes on. Thank you everybody for watching, and see you soon.